Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you guys doing well. If you're new to this channel, welcome. My name is Say Park, and today we're going to take a deep dive into the world of SD cards for the latest Sony Alpha cameras. Actually, we're gonna skip the shallow section and we're just gonna deep dive. Is that okay? So in this video, I'm going to compare a bunch of memory cards so you know which one to get or not to get in this case, because one of them actually surprised me. Also, the memory cards that I will be recommending at the end of this video have been tested in real life. I work for Envo Films, who also has the same camera setup and uses one of these cards, and I shot 3 weddings with dual card setup with these, so they have been tested in the field, like literally we're in the field. The camera I'm working with is the Sony A7S III, which I'm filming with right now, and the memory cards that are in question are SanDisk Extreme Pro UHS-1 V30. If you're coming from some of these older Sony cameras like A7 III, you may have a bunch of these. We got Lexar UHS-2 V60, ProGrade UHS-2 V60 and V90, and we have Sony TUF UHS-2 V90, and this is the SFG version, very fast card. And finally, we got these insanely expensive, fastest Sony CFExpress Type A card. The problem here is that what was said about memory cards and their requirements for Sony A7S III before the launch was a little confusing. Sony's bitrate info is not consistent with the memory card specs, and I haven't been able to find SD cards compatibility chart with actual frame rate, including the 240 frames per second. I feel like a lot of people are spending money they don't have to, so that's why I'm making this video, guys. Now, I don't usually use this phrase in my channel, but to get right to the point, here's a chart I made after testing all these memory cards in the highest settings. Feel free to take a screenshot, or you can also find this chart in my latest tweet with this handle. Now that you took a look at that chart, here is the summary and some of my recommendations. If you just upgraded to Sony A7S III and you're living off of ramen noodles right now, see if you can find some of these cheap SanDisk Extreme Pro V30 lying around. You can still enjoy the latest 4K 60 in the glorious 10-bit 422 and XAVC-S format, which is the setting most people are going to use anyway. Now, if you want to expand the capabilities a little bit more, Lexar V60 or ProGrade V60 is a happy medium. I'll leave a link to these cards below in the description so you can check out the latest price, but currently it's around $35 for the 128 gig Lexar card. And I would recommend at least 128 gigs for these cards since these files are big. To give you a sense, 1 minute recording of a 4K 60 and 10-bit 422 XAVC-S format is 1.54 gigs. I had about 10 gigs left after a full day of wedding filming, and this is just like B-rolls and not the full-length ceremony, so that should give you an idea. That's why I think these two cards are in the sweet spot because of the cost. These two V60 cards will let you film everything you need to for most video shoots. You just can't film in 124K SNQ, 240 frames, and anything in XAVC-SI, aka all intra, which sure, easier to edit on your computer if it's slow, but they are like ginormous files, which will fill up your computer that's kind of slow already to begin with, so kind of catch 22 there. And if you find these two cards to be around like the same price, the ProGrade one is 25 megabytes per second faster on the top write speed than the Lexar one, which doesn't affect any gain in recording modes, but depending on your brand preferences and pricing, something to keep in mind. In my experience, they both work great. Now the next two cards are gonna be a little bit interesting. This here is one of Sony's flagship UHS-2 cards. It's got top write speed of 299 megabytes per second, which beats out all these cards except the CFExpress card. But you notice that Sony A7S III with the current release firmware pretty much handicaps this card. This is not one of the recall serial numbers, and I did do a full speed test using a disk utility tool, and it's faster on the computer. It's just really ironic because this is a Sony card. Oh hey, editing Say here at 3 a.m. So I'm just gonna pause this video to clarify something. I saw a video done by Gerald Undone, and he also has this Sony TUF G cards, and he's not having any issues. And the difference between my card and his card is that his cards were all recall and he's got new ones, whereas in mine was not recall and this is one of the older ones. But as you guys know, if you don't do your homework, you can get undone by Gerald Undone. So I went over to my friend's house this evening to make sure his brand new Sony A7S III was having the same issue, and it did. So it was recognizing this as a V30 rather than V90. So my theory is that all the brand new Sony TUF G cards are probably gonna be okay unless they have older cards in stock. If you have one of the older ones, you might have some of the issues that I'm having. Also keep in mind that this is a 32 gig card, so take all this information with a grain of salt. And I'm so sorry this whole video got longer because of all this, but I just want to make sure you guys have the right information. So back to talking at Say. Having seen this, if you have some extra cash or if you're single, I would not recommend getting this card, but rather this one. This is the ProGrade UHS-2 V90 with 250 megabytes per second top write speed. The number after the V is called the sustained write speed, so in this case, this card is guaranteed to write at minimum 90 megabytes per second continuously. And that 600 capital M you see on the XAVC-S All-Intra 4K 60 is actually megabits per second. If you're into computers, you know that 8 bits is 1 byte, so if you calculate 600 megabits per second, it's actually 75 megabytes per second, which this card can handle. Having said that, Sony cameras are really picky on SD cards and sometimes can reject a card that's clearly within the spec, as you saw on the Sony card here. This ProGrade V90 card, on the other hand, can pretty much do everything that a CFExpress Type A card can do, except 120 and 60p in 4K, 240 frames in 1080p, all in 10-bit 422 all-intra file format in SNQ. There is no 120 frames per second in the standard XAVC-S all-intra file format, so I kind of have to do this in SNQ. For 60 frames though, practically you can do 60 in standard all-intra file, and if you really need to film in 60 frames in SNQ mode, you can set the recording frame rate to 60, which won't play back in slow-mo until you get to the post, but it'll actually let you film in that card. Really, the most useful SNQ frame rates are 1 to 2 frames per second to fake or hyperlapse anyways, which this ProGrade card can handle in all-intra. And if you want to film 240 frames per second, you can use XAVC-S mode with this card, which again is the file format most people will shoot in. Just keep in mind that this V90 card is about 3 to 4 times more expensive than the V60 version. So here's the discrepancy. Before the camera was launched, we were told that you need to have CFExpress Type A card to do all-intra SNQ mode, but with this card, you can do up to 30 frames per second on the highest quality all-I SNQ mode. But guys, you do not need a CFExpress Type A card unless you really want that 4K 120 and 240 1080p all-intra SNQ mode we just talked about. So I know what one of my many tests gonna be. I need to test out the quality difference between all 3 4K file formats and 120 frames per second footage to see if there's actually any practical quality difference, which is the only way to warrant a real world benefit of a CFExpress Type A card. So if you haven't subscribed, hit that subscribe button so I can keep making one of these unique Sony A7S III content for you guys. Alright guys, that's it for me today. If you have any questions or want me to cover any rare A7S III topics, let me know in the comments below, and until next time, save some of that moolah. Later.